अष्टोत्तरशतश्री श्रीमद् His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravindam Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Varya Ashtottara-shata-shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Shri Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Ki The Nectar of Devotion Morning Seminar Ki Jai Yogadharma Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol Hari Hari Bol Hari Hari Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudhadavanam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagara Raghunathan Vitam Sajivam Samvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagarpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. At the very onset of present day's discourse, I would like to initially offer my most respectfully prostrated obeisances unto the lotus feet of their divine transcendental lordships, Shri Shri Radha and Gokulanand, along with their eternal transcendental companions and associates such as Shri Lalita Devi, Shri Vishakha Devi, Shri Ruprati Manjari, etc. And along with them, I would also like to submit my most respectfully prostrated submissive homages unto the lotus feet of their divine lordships, Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Shri Shri Nityananda Prabhu, along with their divine perpetual entourage, consisting of Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatana Goswami, and all the 6 Goswamis of Shri Dham Vrindavan. Finally, I would also like to pay my obeisances and due respects unto the lotus feet of His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravindam Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who has very artistically propagated and has dispersed the doctrine of Krishna consciousness throughout this world in this present modern era in most unique and fantastic and unprecedented way. Conclusively, I would also like to pay my obeisances and due honorary respects unto the lotus feet of the initiating spiritual master, along with all the preceptoral spiritual masters, as well as all the senior Vaishnava devotees of the Lord present herein. And thereafter, now let us commence the context of our present day's discussion, especially the context and topic pertaining to the elaboration and deliberation on the nectar of devotion, also known as Sri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, compiled by Srila Rupa Goswami. So, for the next 2 days, there will be a special seminar, especially focusing on the nectar of devotion in the morning hours. So, this unprecedented treatise, Sri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is literally translated as, the word Sindhu is translated as an ocean, a vast ocean, a reservoir of water and a vast ocean. That is what we mean by the word Sindhu. Amrita means the nectar. Rasa means, rasa is defined as the transcendental, juicy mellows of devotion. That is rasa. So the transcendental juicy mellows, that is what we mean by rasa. The word rasa, as it comes in the phrase Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, does not denote any form of mundane or temporal rasa of, produced from the inert matter. It rather indicates the transcendental rasa, or the transcendental supramundane and non-phenomenal mellow of devotion. So, and bhakti is literally translated as devotional service. Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And the word Shri, which comes before Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, indicates that this treatise Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is very much opulent, consisting knowledge and devotional service. Because that is the meaning of the word Shri as it is defined by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Sarva Sambhadini commentary to Tattva Sandarbha, while defining the word Shri and Srila. Jiva Goswami says that both the words Shri and Srila indicate either that personality or that object which consists or which is endowed with the opulence of devotion, knowledge and renunciation. Jnana, Bhakti and Vairagya. So Jiva Goswami says, Jnana, Bhakti, Vairagya, Sampatti, Mantau, Iti, Shri, Srila Hava. That any object which is endowed with renunciation, with knowledge and with devotion. So Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is full of knowledge and devotion. That is why it is known as Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So the literal meaning of the book is the ocean of the nectarian, juicy mellows of devotional service. In short, the name is paraphrased as the nectar of devotion, as His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada puts it while writing his summary studies on this book. So, according to Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of our institution, when Srila Prabhupada has written the introduction to the preface to the nectar of instruction, also known as Sri Upadeshamrita of Rupa Goswami, while writing preface to that book, Srila Prabhupada comments in the very first paragraph that Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada is the actual in charge or the superintendent of this Krishna consciousness movement. He is the final, ultimate in charge of this Krishna consciousness movement. So by this we can understand that Srila Prabhupada and all the other acharyas in our parampara, in our disciplic succession, in our preceptorial line coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the acharyas who have come, they owe their allegiance back to Srila Rupa Goswami, because Rupa Goswami is the foremost acharya. He is actually the primeval teacher of the path of devotion. That is why he is known as Adi Bhakti Ras Acharya. There were many Bhakti acharyas before Rupa Goswami. Let us first become acquainted with the preeminent glories of Rupa Goswami. What is the speciality? What is the unique contribution of Srila Rupa Goswami? The unique contribution of Srila Rupa Goswami cannot be understood if the distinction between Srila Rupa Goswami and his contribution and the contribution that the other previous acharyas of the path of devotion have given is first understood. So let us deliberate on this issue. As Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in his Mangala Charana, in his invocatory verse to his treatise Madhurya Kadambini, he says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Bhakti purvai hai shrita tamtu rasam pashyed yada tadhihi tam naumi satatam rupam nama priyajanam harehe. That I constantly offer my respectful obeisances. Tam naumi. Tam naumi. Naumi means namaskar. Namaskar means I pay my due respects and obeisances constantly. Satatam. Satatam means constantly. Tam naumi satatam. Rupam nama priya janam harehe. I pay my obeisances constantly unto that great personality who has become renowned by the nomenclature, by the designation of Srila Rupa Goswami, Rupa Nam, and who is very dear and who is very intimately dear and close to Supreme Lord Sri Hari. Supreme Lord Sri Hari is none other than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, Rupa Goswami also says that in his invocatory verse to Vidakta Madhav drama composed by him, Rupa Goswami says, glorifying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Anarpita Charin Chirat Karanayamatirna Hakalau Samarpayitu Munnatavajvala Rasam Svabhaktishriyam Harihi Purata Sundaratyuti Kadam Vasandipitaha Sada Hridaya Kandare Spuratu Vahashachi Nandanaha. And then Swarup Damodar Goswami also says in his prayer to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is again quoted in the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj, Shri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kitrishova Nayaiva Svadyo Yena Nutamadurima Kitrishova Madiyah Saukhyam Chasya Madanubhavatah Kitrisham Vettilobha Tadabhavakyah Samajanishachi Garapasindhau Harinduhu. So, as Swarup Damodar Goswami puts it in his diary, as he records or notes in his diary, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari or Lord Krishna of Sri Dham Vrindavan, who has now again appeared from the ocean-like womb of Mother Shachi. Shachi Garbha Sindhau Harinduhu. Indu means the transcendental moon. The transcendental moon who is Lord Hari. Lord Hari is the transcendental enchanting moon of Golok Vrindavan. That transcendental moon who is Lord Hari, he has appeared from the ocean-like womb of Mother Shachi. Shachi Garbha Sindhau Harinduhu. Just like at the time of creation, or just immediately after the creation, in Satya Yuga, when the Samudra Manthan, when the churning of the ocean had taken place, and when both the Devatas and the Danavas, when both the demigods and the demons, headed by Lord Indra and King Bali, when they were churning the ocean using Mandarachal mountain as a churner, at that time, the very first thing that, or actually one of the items that came out from the ocean was Chandrama, was the personified planet and deity of moon. So just like moon has become manifest from the churning of the Milky Ocean, from the churning of the Kshir Sagar at the time of, at the very initial time of creation, or in Satya Yuga. In the same way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has become manifest from the ocean-like womb of Mother Shachi, and he is none other than that Lord Hari, who is the transcendental charming moon of Sri Vrindavan Dham, Harinduhu. So, as we know from that disclosure made by Swarup Damodar Goswami and also by Rupa Goswami also says that Sada Hridaya Kantare Spuratu Vahashachi Nandanaha. In the verse Anarpita Charin Chirat, he says that may that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the son of Shachi and who is none other than Sri Krishna, who is completely non-different from Sri Krishna, may he always be transcendently situated deeply into the interior parts of the hearts of his devotees. Sada Hridaya Kandare Spuratu Vahashachi Nandanaha. May he remain eternally illuminated in that way within the hearts of his pure devotees. So, as we know from these verses written by our great previous acharyas, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Sri Krishna. And that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the preeminent glories of Srila Rupa Goswami, is that Srila Rupa Goswami is the very intimate associate of that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is very dear to that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Lord Hari or Lord Krishna of Vrindavan. Therefore, Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur purposefully, deliberately says that Tam Naumi Satatam Rupam Nama Priya Janam Harehe. Harehe Priya Janam. He is very dear to Hari, who is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Why he is very dear? Because that the reason why he is very dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is disclosed in the first line of that verse. Bhaktihi purvaihi shritatamtu. The reason is that although the path of devotional service was not actually extinct, the path of devotional service and the concept of devotional service was not actually extinct. The concept of devotional service is existing long before Mahaprabhu and his associates made their transcendental advent on this mortal platform. Even long before that, the path and the concept of devotional service was present in this world. And so many different acharyas, many different great personalities, devotees of Lord Krishna, especially the 12 Mahajanas whose names have been mentioned in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the verse spoken by Yavraj. All the 12 Mahajanas who are considered the great acharyas on the path of devotional service, all the bhakti acharyas, all these great acharyas, Mahajanas, and great sages and rishis and munis, including Lord Vyasadev, Lord Narada, the 4 Kumaras, Parashar Muni, and all the great acharyas of the path of devotional service in this Kali-yuga also, like Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Nimbarka, Sri Vishnu Swami, Sri Nath Muni, Sri Yamunacharya, and even Shankaracharya. All these great acharyas who have expounded on the path of devotional service, all of them have taken shelter of devotional service. All of them have taken shelter of Bhakti Maharani. Bhaktihi purvaihai shrita tamtu. And just like Narada Mahamuni has written his treatise Narada Pancharatra, and in Narada Pancharatra he has expounded upon the concept of devotional service. In another treatise written by Narada Muni known as Satvat Tantra, there also Narada Muni expounds greatly on devotional service. And still in third treatise written by Narada Muni known as Naradiya Bhakti Sutra, or the 84 aphorisms which are considered exposition of devotional service. In all these treatises written by Narada Muni and Lord Vyasadev, who is the disciple of Narada Muni, in Srimad Bhagavatam, and in all the various different Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Mahabharata, etc., and Bhagavad Gita, etc., which were compiled by Srila Vyasadev, and by the 4 Kumaras, the sons of Lord Brahma, who have written a treatise known as Sanat Kumar Samhita, and by all the great acharyas who have expounded on the path of devotional service. They have all taken shelter of bhakti, and they have all greatly elaborated on the concept of bhakti yoga. But still, what is the speciality of Rupa Goswami? Vishwanatha reveals bhakti purvaihai shritatam tu rasam pashyet yadatatihi. The unique contribution of Srila Rupa Goswami is that Rupa Goswami has actually established the path of devotional service on the basis of rasa. That task is completely unprecedented. That task is completely unforeseen. It has not been revealed by any other acharya or by any other incarnation of Narayan. Like Lord Kapil Dev has also expounded on the path of devotional service in Bhagavatam. Rishabh Dev has also expounded all these great incarnations, Shakti-Avish avatars of the Lord, all the great sages and all the great acharyas, but none of them have established and have logically established and revealed that how devotional service can actually become transformed into the rasa. Although in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, the hint has been given. The hint has been given in Taittiriya Upanishad, 2nd chapter, 7th mantra. Raso vai saha rasam yevayam laktva nandi bhavati. And this mantra of Taittiriya Upanishad has also been quoted by Jiva Goswami in Priti Sandarbha. So, Taittiriya Upanishad declares that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, he is the very embodiment, he is the very personification of rasa. Rasa means the transcendental mellows of devotion. Rasam hyevayam laptvanandi bhavati. And this Shri Krishna, who is none other than the rasa personified, only by obtaining the transcendental lotus feet of that Shri Krishna, who is rasa personified, can the living entities who are suffering from time immemorial in this material world, within the pangs of different manifold material miseries, can ever obtain permanent satisfaction and can ever experience the transcendental spiritual bliss thereby. So, raso vai saha rasam hyevayam laptvanandi bhavati. So, it has been hinted upon in Vedas and also in many different parts of the scriptures. But how is that Shri Krishna the very personification of rasa? And how the devotional service unto the lotus feet of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, comprises of rasa, consists of rasa, and is made up of different types of rasas that had not been actually revealed or highlighted or emphasized upon by any of the other acharyas of the path of devotional service. And Rupa Goswami is the first acharya to practically show and to technically establish through logical means and showing the systematic process how bhakti transforms into rasa, how bhakti gets transformed into rasa. Therefore, Rupa Goswami, the way he used to transform bhakti into rasa has been disclosed by Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that premadi sthai bhava savakri milane Krishna bhakti rasa rupe paya pariname vibhava anubhava sattvika vyabhichari sthai bhava rasa haya eichari mili. Krishnadas says that there are 5 types of loving relationships that are existing between the devotees and the Lord. So, the devotees are reciprocating with the Lord, and simultaneously the Lord is also reciprocating with his devotees, as he has given promise in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam stathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmano vartante manushyaha partha sarvashaha. That in the degree, that in the capacity, that in the proportion, the person who surrenders unto me, I also reciprocate with that person in same proportion, in same amount, in same degree. So, there are 5 types of relationships that the devotees maintain with the Lord, and the Lord also simultaneously corresponds in the same way to the moods and sentiments of his devotees. So what are those 5 types of relationships? Those 5 types of relationships are rather known as, first, the Shanta Bhav or Shanta Rati. Rati is actually translated as the affection or the love, which is completely unmotivated, which is completely unmixed by any material or spiritual desire, culminating in personal, selfish sake. Like the desire of getting liberation, that is a spiritual desire, that's not a material desire. But even that spiritual desire is culminating in personal self-satisfaction, in personal selfish sake. For the sake of personal self-pleasure, the desire of liberation becomes aroused in the heart of jnanis, in the heart of those who are aspiring after liberation. And the various different types of, the various different forms of mundane desires for sense gratification, for sensual enjoyment, they become aroused in the hearts of karmis. And they are material desires, and they are also culminating in personal selfish sake. So all the desires, whether they are spiritual desires of liberation or material desires of sense enjoyment, if they are culminating in personal sake, then they are to be completely discarded. And we are right now talking about that unadulterated, unalloyed love for the lotus feet of the Lord, which is completely devoid of all the desires of liberation and sense enjoyment, of all the desires of bhukti. Bhukti means bhoga, enjoyment, sense enjoyment, and mukti, which means moksha, or the liberation or the emancipation of 5 types. As Kapil Dev explains in the 3rd chapter, in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam to his mother Devahuti, when he imparts and reveals the true nature of devotion, pure devotion, Shuddha Bhakti, Kapil Deva thereupon says that Salokya sarshti samipya sarupyaikatvam apyuta diyamanam nagrihnanti vinamat sevanam jalaha lakshanam bhakti yogasya nirgunasya hyudahritam. Kapil Dev says that now the symptoms of that devotional service which is on the platform of transcendence will be described. Transcendence means not that devotional service which is on the platform of mundane modes of goodness, passion and ignorance, but rather that devotional service which is completely above threefold modes of material nature, which is completely comprising of Vishuddha Sattva, or the pure transcendental goodness. Therefore, Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, last verse, Mam chayo avyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate, that by steadfastly and unflinchingly following the path of devotional service, sadhan bhakti, one gradually comes to the platform of becoming self-realized Brahma-bhuta platform, and he actually becomes transcendental and goes beyond the 3 modes of material nature. Sadgunam samatityaitam. Why a pure devotee goes beyond the 3 modes of material nature and becomes situated in transcendence? Why? Because the very path that he uses, the very means that he uses, that he utilizes for attaining Krishna, that sadhan bhakti is itself transcendental. That path of sadhan bhakti is itself transcendental, is itself, Bhakti Maharani is itself beyond the 3 modes of material nature. That therefore, the devotee who takes shelter of that Bhakti Maharani, he also becomes transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature. So therefore, Bhakti Maharani has been considered to be on the platform of transcendence, Vishuddha Sattva. Therefore, Vishuddha Sattva sometimes is also known as Nirgun. Nirgun means devoid of all the 3 material gunas, but not devoid of the transcendental spiritual guna. Devoid of the material gunas. So Kapil Dev says, Lakshanam Bhakti Yogasya Nirgunasya Hilahritam. Now I will enumerate the symptoms of that devotional service in particular, which is on the level of transcendence. Then Kapil Deva says that Salokya Sashti Samipya, etc. That all the 5 types of liberations, Salokya means residing in the same transcendental planet of Vaikuntha where the Lord Narayana resides, that is known as Salokya Mukti, Salokya liberation. Samipya means being very closely proximate, being in close vicinity, being very near to Lord Narayana in Vaikuntha. That liberation is known as Samipya Mukti. That means being physically very near to Narayana. That is Samipya Mukti. Then there is Sarshti Mukti, having almost similar opulences to that possessed by Lord Narayana in Vaikuntha. That is known as Sarshti Mukti. Then there is Sarupya Mukti, having almost similar external form and countenance that Lord Narayana possesses. That is known as Sarupya Mukti. And the 5th is known as impersonal liberation. These first 4 are known as personal liberations. The 5th is known as impersonal liberation because in the 5th liberation, the living entity becomes merged into the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth, and that is known as Brahma Sayujya Mukti. So these 5 types of liberations, Kapil Dev says that even if I personally give these 5 types of liberations to my devotees, to my pure servants, then those pure servitors of mine, they do not accept these 5 types of liberations. Even if I be the giver of these liberations to them, still they do not accept. Even if I personally give them, they reject these the offer of these liberations. They reject the whole proposal. So that devotional service, which is completely beyond all the desires of liberation and sense enjoyment, and which only aims at satisfying Lord Shri Krishna, that devotional service on the platform of love is rather known as Rati or Sthai Bhav. Sthai bhav means permanent sentiment, permanent relationship that a devotee in particular has with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. So there are 5 types of permanent relationships. Shanta dasya sakhya vatsalya madhura rasa nama Krishna bhakti rasa madhye e pancha pradhana, as it is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The first is known as the Shantavrati. Shantavrati is the state of passive devotion, which is marked by incessant and uninterrupted remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. As it has been declared in Padma Puran, that the greatest, that the king of all injunctions, the king of all regulative injunctions is to always remember the lotus feet of the Lord, and the king and the crest jewel of all prohibitive, negative injunctions laid down in the Shastras is to never forget the transcendental lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Smartavyaha sapatam vishnuhu vismartavyo na jahatuchit sarve vidhi nishedaha syuhu etayoreva kinkaraha, as it is declared by Vyasdev in Padma Puran, that the king of all the vidhis means all the regulative injunctions of the scriptures, the king injunction of all the other injunctions which are regulative is to always remember the lotus feet of Krishna. And the king of all the prohibitive, negative injunctions enumerated in the scriptures is to never forget the lotus feet of Lord Hari. So, all the other regulative and prohibitive injunctions are servants of these 2 main injunctions. Etayoreva kinkaraha. Kinkaraha means all the other rules and regulations of the Shastras. They are servants of these 2 main rules and regulations. So, to always remember the lotus feet of the Lord without ever forgetting Him, but still not having any desire of physically serving the transcendental personal form of the Lord, that is Shantavrati. That is the passive state of devotion. Example, the foremost example, the most ideal exemplary character of Shantavrati is Prahlad Maharaj. As the Acharyas have revealed, Prahlad Maharaj is considered the foremost example of Shantavrati. Why? Because Prahlad Maharaj, he has never, and even now, he is not personally serving the lotus feet of Lord Nrsimhadev. He finds great pleasure in always remembering and contemplating on the transcendental form and lotus feet of the Lord, but there is no mood or desire of actively, that means physically, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, that is what we mean by Shantavrati, or the passive state of devotion. And then comes Dasyarati. Dasyarati means the transcendental mellow or mood of servitude to serve the lotus feet of Lord Narayana, Lord Krishna, or any of his incarnations through active way. Active way means to physically become engaged, to physically become indulged in serving the lotus feet of the Lord, and to physically serve the transcendental form of the Lord, and to satisfy all of his senses through a physical endeavor. That is what we mean by Dasyarati. And then on the platform of Shanta, devotee doesn't have an actual personal relation with the Lord. On the platform of Shanta, devotee thinks that Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he thinks in a general way that I am servant of the Lord because Lord is the master of all the living entities, and because I am marginal potency, I am part and parcel, I am fragmental part of that Supreme Lord Krishna, and he is my original source. So in that way, he is my master, but he doesn't have actual relationship of servant and master, like a Dasya Bhakta has. A Dasya Bhakta has an actual physical relationship with Lord Shri Krishna. He serves the lotus feet of the Lord, he fends the Lord, he bathes the Lord, he puts ornaments and garments on top of the lotus feet of transcendental body of his Lord, and he serves the Lord in various ways. Like the example of Daruka is given. Daruk is the foremost servant of Krishna in Dwarka, and Raktaka, Patraka and Chitrak, they are the foremost servants of Shri Krishna in the pastimes of Vrindavan, and they are also on the platform of Dasya Bhav. So to physically serve the lotus feet of the Lord, considering him to be master and oneself to be servant, that is called dasyarati, the mood of servitude. And then comes the mood of fraternity, fraternal affection. Fraternal affection means the transcendental mellow of friendship. So in the mood of friendship, both the devotee and the Lord, they consider each other to be on the same platform, to be on the same level. Now, as it has been explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is an in-depth explanation of all these 5 types of affections. Because unless we understand these 5 types of ratis, these 5 types of love, actually love for Sri Krishna becomes divided into 5 different forms. So, if we do not become acquainted with these 5 forms of rati, then we will not understand how the rati actually becomes transformed into rasa. There is a difference between Shant Rati and Shanta Ras. There is difference between Dasya Rati and Dasya Ras. There is difference between Sakhya Rati and Sakhya Ras. There is distinction between Vatsalya Rati and Vatsalya Ras. And there is segregation between the Shringar or the Madhur Rati and the Shringar Ras or the Madhur Ras. There is difference. Rati and Ras are greatly differentiated. Therefore, before Rupa Goswami, all the other acharyas who have expounded on the path of devotion, they only had idea about ratis. They didn't have idea about rasa. Or even if they had idea, they were not able to explain or establish through a written way how the rati becomes transformed into rasa. So first let us become acquainted with the nature of rati. What is rati? Rati means love for Krishna. That is all right, but the Shanta Rati, the definition that we gave was a very general definition. Now, the in-depth explanation is given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he gives his instructions to Rupa Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela in the holy place of Prayag. At that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells Rupa Goswami that Shanta Rati means Swarga Moksha Krishna Bhakta Naraka Karimane Krishna Nishtha Krishna Tyaga Shantera Dui Gune Shantera Swabhava Krishne Mamata Gandhahina Param Brahma Paramatma Jnana Pravina. What is the special characteristic of Shanta Rati? That is explained. Swarga Moksha Krishna Bhakta Naraka Karimane. A devotee on the platform of Shanta, he is not Sakam Karmi, he is not Nishkam Karma Yogi, he is not Jnani, and he is not Ashtanga Yogi. He is rather pure devotee of the Lord. He is a Shuddha Bhakta. Because many people have doubts. Many people, they rather overlap Shanta Bhaktas with the Jnanis and Ashtanga Yogis. That's not the reality. Just because the Shanta Bhaktas are not actively serving the lotus feet of the Lord, and just because they are contemplating on the lotus feet of the Lord, doesn't mean that they are the same as the Ashtanga Yogis. The Ashtanga Yogis, the reason why many people consider Shanta Bhaktas to be the same as the Ashtanga Yogis is because Ashtanga Yogis also contemplate on the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, who is present as Super Soul in the hearts of everyone, known as Kshirodakshai Vishnu. So the Ashtanga Yogis, or the Paramatmavadis means those who are very much attracted to the Paramatma feature of the Lord. But the Shanta Bhaktas are not attracted to the Paramatma feature of the Lord. Is Prahlad Maharaj attracted to the Paramatma feature of the Lord? No. Narsingh Dev is not Paramatma. Narsingh Dev is Bhagavan feature. So that's why first one has to understand the threefold distinction between the 3 categories of absolute truth. Absolute truth, or the potent, energetic principle, is only one, and that is Shri Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan of Shri Vrindavan Dham. But that Swayam Bhagavan of Vrindavan Dham, the original, energetic and potent principle, the Shaktiman, Shri Krishna, he becomes manifest into 3 aspects. The impersonal Brahman, which is the effulgence radiating from his limbs. Then the localized portion of his known as Paramatma or Super Soul, who is known as Kshirodakshai Vishnu. And then the Bhagavan feature, that's the 3rd aspect of Shri Krishna. So all the various different incarnations of Krishna, like Lord Ramachandra, Krishna, Varaha, Matsya, Narsingha, Kurma, Narayan of Vaikuntha, Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, the first and the second quadruple expansions, all of these various expansions of Krishna, excluding the three types of Purusha incarnations, not considering, excluding the Karamadakshayi, Garbhodakshai and Kshirodakshai are known as Bhagavan. Karamadakshayi, Kshirodakshai and Garbhodakshai are known as Paramatma. They are the Paramatma features. They are considered within the Paramatma category. They are not considered within the Bhagavan category. By Rupa Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita. So Bhagavan, all the other incarnations, excluding the Shakyavesh and the Purusha avatars, the three Purusha incarnations, the three types of Vishnus, and all the Shakyavesh avatars, excluding them, all the other, and also excluding the Manvantara avatars. Yes, also excluding the Manvantara avatars. All the other incarnations of the Lord are known as Bhagavan. They are put into the Bhagavan feature. So, the Paramatmavadis are those who are very much attracted to the Paramatma feature of the Lord. And the Jnanis are those who are very much attracted to the impersonal Brahman aspect of the Lord. So the Jnanis are attached to the Nirvishesh Brahman, and the Paramatmavadis, who are also known as Ashtanga Yogis, following the path of Ashtanga Yoga, the eightfold mystic process of yoga, which includes Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, Dhyan, Dharana, Pratyahara and Samadhi, these eightfold limbs of yoga system. So those Ashtanga Yogis, they are attracted to the Paramatma feature. They are contemplating on the lotus feet of Lord Kshirodakshai Vishnu, who is the Super Soul. Whereas the Shanta Bhaktas, they are contemplating on the Bhagavan features of the Lord. All the different Bhagavanas like Ramachandra, Narsimhadev, etc., Narayan, etc. So you will not find Prahlad Maharaj, his worshipable deity is Narsimhadev. His worshipable deity is not the Paramatma feature. That's the distinction which makes Ashtanga Yogi different from a Shanta Bhakta. That's the very distinction. And there are also other distinctions. The Ashtanga Yogi, the reason why he contemplates on the lotus feet of Kshirodakshai Vishnu, Super Soul, is because he wants to become liberated. He wants to get Paramatma Sayujya Mukti. There are three types of Sayujya Muktis. Kapil Dev generally says that there is Sayujya Mukti. He doesn't specifically describe how many types of Sayujya Muktis are there. In his verse of Bhagavatam Salokya Sarshti Samipya, Kapil Dev very generally describes Sayujya Mukti. He doesn't categorize Sayujya Mukti into subdivisions. But Jiva Goswami in Priti Sandar, quoting various different scriptures and backing his point, his viewpoint and his stand from different scriptures, Jiva Goswami concludes there are three types of Sayujya Muktis. The Brahma Sayujya, the Paramatma Sayujya, and the Bhagavad Sayujya. So Brahma Sayujya means merging or becoming one with the impersonal Brahman effulgence. That is known as Brahma Sayujya Mukti. And that Brahma Sayujya Mukti is hankered after by, is aspired after by the Jnanis, following the path of impersonal knowledge, monastic knowledge, Jnana Marga. Whereas the Ashtanga Yogis, the Paramatmavadis, they are hankering after the Paramatma Sayujya Mukti. It is still a type of Sayujya. They are also wanting to become one with the Super Soul, Kshirodakshai Vishnu. They don't want to merge into the impersonal Brahman feature, they want to merge into the personal form of Kshirodakshai Vishnu, but that is still Sayujya Mukti. That is still wanting to become one with absolute truth. So, the Ashtanga Yogis have the desire of Mukti, liberation. But Paramatma Sayujya Mukti is one type of liberation, one of the 5 types of liberations. Whereas the characteristics given of Shanta Bhakta are completely contradictory. Therefore, Shanta Bhakta, even though inactively serving the Lord, cannot be considered the same as an Ashtanga Yogi. He is a Shuddha Bhakta. Shanta Vrati, Shanta Rasa is part of pure devotional service. It's not part of Jnana Marga. It's not part of Ashtanga Yoga. So, therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells Rupa Goswami that Swarga Moksha Krishna Bhakta Naraka Karimami. The essential characteristics of Shanta Bhakta is that he considers heaven, Swarga means heaven, or the celestial paradise. And he considers liberation, moksha, of all the 5 types, to be
like hell, as equal to hell. He considers heaven and liberation to be as equal, to be as equivalent, and to be the same as going to hell or narak. Narak means hell. Therefore, Prabhupada Saraswati Pad, he also says in his Chaitanya Chandramritam that Kaivalyam narakayate tridashapura prothatadanshtrayate. Prabhupada Saraswati, the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he says that Kaivalyam narakayate, that this Kaivalya is the same as Sayujya Mukti, merging liberation. This Kaivalya or Sayujya Mukti is personified hell. Kaivalyam narakayate, tridashapura prothatadanshtrayate. And then Raghunath Das Goswami also says in his Manasha, and his instructions given to the mind, that muktihi vyagrini, that this liberation is just like a tigress who devours this, especially this impersonal liberation, Sayujya Mukti, is just like a tigress which devours the personal existing conception and the individual conception of the living entity. A living entity, after merging, loses his individual mentality and his individual conception that I am an individual living entity, and he thinks that I have now become the same as absolute truth. So mukti is just like a tigress which is devouring the conception of individual personal existence. Therefore, the Shanta Bhakta, not being a part of Gyan Marg and Ashtanga Yoga, and being part of pure devotional service, he considers both the moksha, the liberation, and the swarga, the heavenly planet. That means swarga means all types of sense enjoyment. By the word swarga, we shouldn't just consider going to heaven. What is implied, what is indirectly implied by the usage of the word swarga here? The indirect reference or the indirect implication by the usage of the word swarga or heaven is that all sorts of sense gratification, whether the sense gratification is found on earth or whether the sense gratification is found in heaven, all sorts of mundane sense gratification are to be considered just as hell by a Shanta Bhakta. And moksha, all types of muktis, are considered to be like a hell. Krishna Bhakta Naraka Karimani, Krishna Nishtha, Trishna Tyag, Shantir Dui Gune. So, the Shanta Bhakta has two qualities. The first is that Trishna Tyag. Trishna Tyag means he doesn't have any desire of bhukti and mukti, sense gratification and liberation. Therefore, Rupa Goswami also says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhukti Mukti Sprihayavat Pishachi Hridi Vartate Tavat Bhakti Sukhasyatra Katham Abhyudayo Bhave. That as long as, Rupa Goswami cautions and warns, that as long as the reflection of the desires of sense enjoyment and liberation, and the reflections of those desires, which are appearing like personified witches, just like in Great Britain, there is a conception in the medieval literature of Great Britain, there is a conception of a witch on a broomstick, right? So yes, so Rupa Goswami also considers these two desires, the desires of the sense enjoyment and liberation, to be just like two witches which are completely intoxicated, and which are very fearsome and detrimental, that if those two witches in the form of these two desires, as long as they continue to dance on the arena of heart of a living entity, until that time, no question arises, no possibility arises whatsoever that the living entity will be ever able to relish and experience the transcendental felicity and the paramount bliss as produced by the performance of pure devotional service. No question arises. Bhukti Mukti Sprihayavat Pishachi Hridi Vartate. Pishachi means it's a witch personified. Pishachi. Hridi Vartate Tavat Bhakti Sukhasyatra Katham Apyudayo Bhavet. So that's the most basic fundamental requirement of devotional service. Doesn't matter you are on Shanta Bhav, Dasya Bhav, Sakya Bhav, Vatsalya Bhav, or any Bhav. The most basic and common requirement, if you want to enter the path of devotion and if you want to be considered a pure devotee, is that you have to be completely free from these two desires. So, Trishna Tyag. Trishna means desires, and Tyag means relinquishing, rejection, abandoning these material desires and these spiritual desires also. That is the first quality of Shanta Bhakta. So, Acharyas explain that Trishna Tyag, or rejection of the desires of sense enjoyment and liberation, that is only extrinsic characteristic of a Shanta Bhakta. That is not the intrinsic characteristic. There are two types of characteristics. And when we will define devotional service, then also we will come across two types of characteristics or two types of symptoms of devotional service. And what are those? The first is known as Swarupa Lakshana, or the intrinsic characteristic. And the second is known as Tatastha Lakshana, or the extrinsic characteristic. What do we mean by that? Extrinsic characteristics are those symptoms which are not part of that particular object, but those are the symptoms which that particular object is devoid of. So in order to reveal the special feature, and in order to reveal the pure feature of some particular object, the pure feature, the unadulterated feature, sometimes it is said that this particular object is devoid of these items or these qualities. Just like, to make the matter more simpler, one example is given, that water. If we say that water is neither a solid object nor a gaseous object. Water is neither a gaseous object nor a solid object. Okay, in one way the water is defined. So in one way you can consider this type of definition of water or this type of symptom of water to be a symptom defining water. Because water is neither solid nor gaseous. Water is not a gaseous object. Water is neither a solid object. It doesn't have a fixed shape and density, volume and all that. And it's neither gaseous. So to say that water is neither a gaseous object or solid object, this kind of definition can be considered one type of definition of water. But it is still not the real definition of water. Why? Because just by considering that water is not gaseous and not a solid object, one doesn't still become acquainted with the true nature of water. We just know negatively that what water is not, but we still don't know what water actually is. So the extrinsic characteristic or the Tatastha Lakshana are those symptoms of any particular object being defined, are those symptoms of that particular object which are not part of that object, but which just describe how that particular object is different from other objects. Like water is different from all the solid and gaseous objects. That's why we say water is not solid nor a gas. But still it doesn't reveal what water actually is. So those symptoms which reveal what that particular object actually is, those symptoms are known as intrinsic characteristics or Swarupa Lakshana, because they make us acquainted with the inherent nature of that particular object. That's why they are known as Swarupa Lakshana or the intrinsic characteristics. So the example of Swarupa Lakshana is that water is a liquid substance composed of, water is not gaseous or solid, that is Tatastha, that is extrinsic. But the intrinsic is, water is an aqueous object. Aqueous means it's a liquid. Water is an aqueous object, it's a liquid consisting of 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen. That definition, because it acquaints us with the inherent nature of water, that's why it is known as Swarupa Lakshana or the intrinsic characteristic. So, Trishna Tyaga here likewise has been considered to be extrinsic characteristic. Okay, Shanta Bhakta is devoid of the desires of liberation and sense enjoyment. But even stone is devoid of desires of sense enjoyment and liberation. Even a stone, a dead object, then how does that make the Shanta Bhakta different from a stone? For that, Swarupa Lakshana has to be known. For that, you have to know what is the Swarupa Lakshana of Shanta Bhakti. What is the intrinsic characteristic? So the intrinsic characteristic is Krishna Nishtha. Krishna Nishtha. By saying that Shanta Bhakta is not aspiring after Bhukti and Mukti, one comes to the understanding that Shanta Bhakta is not the same as Jnani, Karmi or Ashtanga Yogi. That makes him different from the others. But in order to factually know what Shanta Bhakta is, one has to understand what Krishna Nishtha is. Krishna Nishtha means firm faith in Krishna. Krishna Nishtha, that is the second characteristic of Shanta Bhakta. These are the only two characteristics. Krishna Nishtha, Trishna Tyag, Shanter, Dui Gune. Dui Gune means these are the only two qualities. So, Shanter Swabhava Krishne Mamata Gandhaheen Param Brahma Paramatma Jnana Praveen. The first so the characteristic of Krishna Nishtha is defined as that the Shanta Bhakta considers Krishna to be Parabrahma. Parabrahma means supreme absolute truth, par excellence. And he considers Krishna to be Paramatma, super soul of all living entities. And he considers Krishna also to be Bhagavan, being endowed with all the six opulences. And this mood of awe and reverence, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He is the origin of everything, as Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, Mattaha Parataram Nanyat Kimchidasti Dhananjaya, Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Maniganaiva, that there is no other principle or truth higher than me. I am the highest truth, and all the rest of the whole world is dependent on me, just like the pearls are hung on a thread. In the same way, all the living entities, they are sheltered upon me. Then Krishna also says, Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram in Gita, that I am the greatest enjoyer, and all the sacrifices and penances are meant for my sake. And then Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Mattaha Sarvam Pravartate Iti Matva Bhajante Mam Buddha Bhava Samanvitaha, that I am the reservoir of everything, I am the origin and source of everything. Pita Hamasya Jagato Mata Dhata Pitamaha, I am the great seed-giving father and everything, I am the maintainer, etc. So all these concepts which give rise to awe and reverence for the Lord, the Shanta Bhakta is firmly situated in this concept. And the speciality is that the special characteristic which makes Shanta Bhakta different from all the other, like Dasya Bhaktas, Sakhya Bhaktas, Vatsalya Bhaktas, and Shringar Bhaktas. So the characteristic which makes the Shanta Bhaktas different from all the other succeeding categories is that he is Mamata Gandhaheen. Shanter Swabhava Krishna Mamata Gandhaheen. He doesn't have Mamata. Mamata means he doesn't have the concept that Krishna is mine. Rather, he has the concept that I belong to Krishna, not that Krishna belongs to me. He doesn't have the mood of Mamata. Mamata means the same as Madiyata Bhav. Madiyata Bhav means Krishna is mine. Whereas the Shanta Bhakta has the mood that I belong to Krishna, Shri Krishna Tavasmi. As Vishnu Swami, he had propounded one motto during his time. So Vishnu Swami, who is a very great Acharya of Bhakti, he propounded one motto, and the followers in the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, they also chant this mantra. And what is that? Shri Krishna Tavasmi. Shri Krishna Tavasmi means that, oh Krishna, I belong to you. So this is actually known as the Shanta Bhava. Tadiyata. Tadiyata means I belong to Krishna, and Madiyata means Krishna belongs to me. So Mamata Gandhaheen, both in the Dasya Bhaktas, Sakhya Bhaktas, Vatsalya Bhaktas, and the devotees on the platform of conjugal, all of them have the feeling that Krishna actually belongs to us. But the Shanta Bhaktas do not have that intimate relationship. Therefore, they are at little distance from the Lord. Therefore, they have this special feeling that we belong to Krishna, and that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Shanta Bhaktas have this feeling in the mind that because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he doesn't actually need service. He doesn't actually need service. He is already self-satisfied. He doesn't actually need service. And how can we serve Krishna? We are completely incompetent to serve Krishna. Because of these conceptions, the Shanta Bhakta is not actually very much willing to actively engage in the physical service of the Lord. So now, today we have just defined the two characteristics of Shanta Bhav. Now, starting from tomorrow, we will define the special qualities of Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Shringar. And then we will come to understand what Rati actually is, and how Rati becomes transformed into Rasa, and how Rupa Goswami has made Rati transformed into Rasa. And therefore, we will come to understand the unique contribution made by Srila Rupa Goswami, the author and compiler of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Any questions or comments? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Merging into the super soul and merging into the impersonal Brahman. Paramatma Sayuja and Brahma Sayuja. There is a third type known as Bhagavad Sayuja, which means merging into the transcendental form of the Bhagavan feature. Merging into the Paramatma feature is known as Paramatma Sayuja. Merging into the impersonal Brahman is known as Brahma Sayuja. But merging into the personal Bhagavan feature, the Bhagavan aspect of the Lord, is known as Bhagavad Sayuja. Like all the demons, the example is all the demons who are killed by the various different incarnations and forms of Bhagavan. Like Lord Ramachandra, he killed many demons. Lord Narayana, in his various different incarnations as Varaha, Narsimha, he also killed many demons. And Lord Krishna, of course, also killed many demons during his pastimes. So all the demons who are killed by the Bhagavan forms, those demons, they merge into the Bhagavan aspect of the Lord, just like Shishupal. Shishupal was killed. He merged not into the Kshayakshay Vishnu or the Paramatma, not into the impersonal Brahman, but his soul became merged into Dwarkadhish Krishna, into Krishna of Dwarka. And Krishna of Dwarka is part of Bhagavan aspect. It's not part of Paramatma or Brahma aspect. So the demons generally who are killed by Lord's lotus hands, they become merged into the Bhagavan feature of the Lord, and therefore that merging, which is into the Bhagavan aspect, is known as the Bhagavad Sayuja Mukti. Therefore in Vishnu Puran also, Parashar Muni tells his student Maitreya Muni that Siddhaloka tu tamasaha pare yatra vasantihi Siddha brahma sukhe magnaha daityascha harina hataha. That all the daityas, all the demons directly killed by Lord Hari, daityascha harina hataha, they also attain this merging liberation, Sayuja Mukti. That is also mentioned there in Vishnu Puran by Parashar Muni. Yes, some other question?
I just wanted to ask, like you gave the example of another person, he is in secular.
Yeah.
Can you give us another person who is again also but for me to make more clear about that type of relationship?
So actually you need reference for what?
Just somebody else who also was in that class, because I was always thinking that
In Shantaras.
yes, I was always thinking the Shantaras is the same as what you said, it's not
No.
Ashtanga. So if you give me some other example, it will make me more clear the picture.
Yeah, the second example given is of the four Kumaras. The four Kumaras, they are also on the platform of Shantaras, and even Shukdev Goswami, he's also on the platform of Shantaras. But now tomorrow we will see that Shantarasa is of two different types. And because Shanta Bhav, Shanta Rati is of two different types, therefore Shanta Bhaktas are also of two different types. So the Shanta Bhaktas in Vaikuntha, the foremost example of that are the four Kumaras and Prahlad Maharaj. But the Shanta Bhakta in Golok Vrindavan, Krishna Leela, is Shukdev Goswami. The example of that is Shukdev Goswami. And there is a great deal of difference between the Shantaras which is existing in Krishna Leela and the Shantaras which is existing in other parts of the spiritual world like Vaikuntha, Ayodhya, etc. So that difference we will ponder upon in our tomorrow's upcoming discussion. Yes.
You explained about Ashtanga Yoga spirituality. In Gita also, Krishna explained Arjuna in 6th chapter. Can you explain what is the significance of Krishna explaining Ashtanga Yoga to Arjuna?
You see, Bhagavad Gita does not only exclusively focus on devotional service. It focuses also on Nishkam Karma Yoga, that means unmotivated action, and it also focuses on in some parts of Gita, it also focuses on Jnana, path of impersonal knowledge. And sometimes in some parts of Gita, it also focuses on Ashtanga Yoga. The reason why Gita does not exclusively focus on devotional service or bhakti is because Krishna wants to show the supremacy of bhakti. And the supremacy of bhakti cannot be shown unless the other paths are comparatively mentioned. Therefore, just like an example is given, that the sun, or I mean the moon, or actually the sunlight, yes. The sunlight cannot be appreciated, or in general, any light. The principle of light or illumination cannot be appreciated as long as one doesn't come into contact and come into the knowledge of the principle of darkness. As long as one doesn't understand, one doesn't comprehend what darkness is, what oblivion is, what darkness is, what oblivion is, one will not truly come to appreciate the usefulness of the light and the illumination. Okay, we have now seen the darkness. And we know that when it is dark, we do not know the true nature of any object that we perceive. The true form of any knowledge that we perceive or that we see in darkness, we do not know the true form and the true knowledge of that object. But as soon as everything becomes lit up after the sunrise, and after the sun becomes illuminated, then in illumination we become acquainted with the true nature of every particular item of this material world that we perceive through our eyes. So after going through darkness, one actually comes to understand the great value of and the great significance of light and illumination. In the same way, if the other inferior paths like the Nishkam Karma, Sakam Karma, Ashtanga Yoga and Jnana, if they are not mentioned, if they are not mentioned, then the supremacy of the path of devotion will not be understood on a comparative basis. That's why you will see that after the end of every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, whether that chapter is dedicated to explaining Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga or any other yoga, but after the end of every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna emphasizes again and comes to the central point of highlighting the path of pure devotion. So, that is Bhagavad Gita. But in Bhagavatam, no mention of any other path is there. Because Vyasadeva promises in the very second verse of Bhagavatam, in the very beginning of Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva promises and makes one thing clarified, that I will not mention anything but pure devotional service exclusively in Bhagavatam. Dharma projita kaitamotra. I will not mention any forms of cheating forms of religion. Kaitava dharma means any cheating forms of religion like dharma, artha, kam, moksha, jnana, karma, yoga, etc. I will just mention the path of pure bhakti in Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, in Bhagavatam we do not find what is in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is a different type of scripture than Bhagavatam. Yes.
Just for clarification, according to what this question about that merging in Bhagavad feature,
Yeah.
you mentioned something about Dwarka and this at this point, and we missed.
Yeah, Shishupal, when his head was severed, when he was beheaded by Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra in the royal court of Maharaj Yudhishthira during the Rajasuya sacrifice, at that time it is mentioned in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam that the soul, the Atma, the soul which was present in Shishupal's body became merged into the Dwarkadhish Krishna's personal form. So Dwarkadhish Krishna is Bhagavan feature, is not Paramatma feature. So we can understand that all the demons who are killed, they become merged into the Bhagavan feature. But according to Jiva Goswami, merging into Bhagavan feature is the most abominable. Merging into the Paramatma feature is little more appreciable. And merging into the impersonal Brahman is very much appreciable in comparison. In a relative comparison, Brahma Sayuja is very much appreciable. Paramatma Sayuja is little less appreciable. And Bhagavad Sayuja is the most least appreciable. And there is a reason after that. So, yes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki, Director of Devotion Seminar ki, Yoga Dharma Shri Hari Rama Sankirtan ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, and I go Premanandi Hari Vibo. Hare Krishna. Sorry for the delay. but it was a special seminar, so we took some little time, we took liberty. Hare Krishna.
Just you were saying about the liberation of the